Harmonies, The Drops of God, and The Fellowship of the Ring trick-taking game. This is Staying In. Pete, have you ever encountered a famous person in real life?
What do you mean? Like how do you define
Had
that?
a conversation with them?
Like a proper conversation?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. I met Germaine Greer.
Interesting.
Yeah. For those not in the know, she is a radical feminist third wave.
Probably second wave, I'd say.
Probably so. Yeah. And she was giving a talk at a theatre in Tunbridge Wells, where I grew up, and we did a trip for sociology. And I was very interested in lots of different theories, and one of the theories that we learned about was feminist theory. And our sociology teacher, Miss Holton Nixon, shout out, was thanks for listening, Miss Holton Nixon. She was very interested in us hearing about lots of different perspectives, so she took us to the theatre to go and see Germaine Greer. It was absolutely amazing. And so I went to an all-boys school, so there was time for question and answers at the end of this big presentation.
Yep.
And this entire row of, young, white, middle-class looking boys in the middle row were all sat there, and I had my hand up and all that sort of stuff. And if you know anything about these kinds of, lectures and stuff, sometimes you get some jerks going and asking silly questions, or trying to ruin the thing. Eventually, she sees me and she goes, "Oh, okay," and she points over to me, and I ask my question. I can't even remember what the question was now, but I'm sure it was very, very intelligent for a 17-year-old boy asking Germaine Greer to tell me something about how society works. But it was good. It was a really nice thing. And then at the end of the event, I walked out the lecture hall, and I realised, I just need to pop to the bathroom. But then I'm going to come back out into the main area, and I'm going to try and meet Germaine Greer, because she's a bit of an idol of mine.
She's incredible.
And I was like, because she came up with some very interesting ideas. And so I wander off to the bathroom and take care of business, and then come back out, and then there's Germaine Greer, and she's in the bar, and she's answering questions, and she's talking to lots of different people. And then I go, I think to myself, okay, and I head straight over, and I say, "Hi, Miss Greer. It's lovely to meet you. I was the last question of the performance. You answered my question. Thank you so much. It's really lovely to hear from you, and it was lovely to hear you answer my question. I was genuinely a bit awestruck." And she looked at me, and she looked me in the eyes, and then she looked the entire length of me, like literally, like looked me up and down.
And you're a tall man.
And I'm a tall man. And she looked me back in the eyes, and she went, "Take care." And she wandered off. And I thought, what a lovely lady. But what a strange way to end the thing. Like maybe I was a little bit daunting, or because we'd been warned, asking questions and all that sort of stuff. And I think, and I'm sort of puzzling it, and I wander back over to the group, and I go, "Hey, you won't guess what's just happened to me." And one of the group said, "I don't know, but your flies are undone."
Yep. There we go. Take care. So much weight behind those two words.
Yeah. My shirt was pulled through my fly.
Oh my gosh.
In a really obvious way.
Wow.
And
almost like directing your gaze.
Oh, honestly, and she, "Take care." It's just like, okay. And
Oh,
so that's how I met probably one of the most influential thinkers of the 20th century.
yeah. And how they met you. Yeah. Insert description there. So,
what about you, Chris? Have you met anyone famous?
I've met a few people. I'm very wary of going up to people who are famous because it's a bit of a strange pursuit, because they're typically, when you encounter these people, typically I would say when I've encountered them, it's often been when they're not doing the thing they're being paid for. So they're kind of just their free time. Like, I don't go up to my plumber in the street and go, just so you know, boiler, absolutely cracking, thank you. I don't do that.
Love your work.
Yeah, exactly. But I was on holiday with my wife recently. We went glamping in Devon, which I haven't been for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And we were sat, as Brits usually do, on a shingle beach, having a cream tea on a plastic table and chairs, wind battling against us, a few sprinkles of rain above.
If we could all stand for the national anthem.
It is, isn't it? It is.
It is, yeah. It is.
It's just missing gingham and stuff. And I was looking over and I saw this chap there. And I'd seen him in loads of stuff. I just recognised the face. He's that kind of actor who, if I said his name, it wouldn't mean anything to you. But if you saw a picture of them, you go, oh, yeah, I've seen them in something.
Okay.
But, like, the things I'd seen him in, I can't imagine him being overly proud of them.
What do you mean?
Because, well, I was looking there thinking, okay, I'm going to go up to him and just say, look, thank you for your work. You know, I've really enjoyed your work. Because I'd seen him as a kid in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. I'd seen him in Game of Thrones, for example. I remember as a child seeing him in an episode of Poirot, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, which is a very good adaptation of a very good mystery novel.
Yeah, absolutely.
But these, you know, and I looked at his CV, and he'd done lots of theatre roles. He's also a bit of a theatre historian as well. And I kind of bottled it, really. I went up to him and I didn't say, oh, thank you for your work, I really enjoyed you in The Phantom Menace. I said, I really enjoyed your performance of Polonius in Hamlet, which I'd never seen, but he was in.
What? Okay.
And I didn't say anything else. I thought, I don't know what else to go. Why have you asked me about Hamlet and Polonius, you know? Like, what did I like specifically? And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do now. Yeah. I can't just tell him, oh, yeah, it was a bit like what you did later when you were in Game of Thrones. I was like, I can't do that. So I just said, yep, bye, and I left. And
sort of drive-by thank
it was a drive-by kind of greeting, but also I felt really bad. It felt really disingenuous because he smiled and he chuckled. He was really happy that I think he'd been recognised because he's in his mid-80s, blue cap. No one else was going up to him on this windswept beach.
Yeah.
And B, that I recognised him for quite a big role. He's written about Shakespeare and stuff like that. But I'd never seen the performance.
But you have also given a nice. You've made someone's day there. I think that's a nice thing. So, moving on, it's the tuna bus today, and for this episode, and it's been a year of the tuna bus, and for anybody who's been not listening since the beginning, a tuna bus is when it's just the two of us, and then somewhere along the lines it got mixed up into just the tuna bus.
There is an anecdote about Sam going to see a karaoke in France, I think, where someone was singing that song and they said tuna bus instead of two of us, and that's where it's kind of come from.
You're right. That's the deep lore. So it's just us two, and I know that you will be. You're always a very thoughtful, very patient person, Chris, and you're always willing to hear me talk about something that the other two might, I don't know, poke me. They might jeer at me. They might, shall we say, bully me.
Right.
About. And so I'm glad that I've saved this topic for just you and I. So this year is the year of the Tuna Bus, but it's also the year that I've been reading a book series called The Drops of God.
Now, I have a vague memory of you mentioning this to me in the past. And
yes.
This sounded like a very bonkers concept for a manga.
So, so it's a Japanese comic that is what's called seinen. And in Japan, you have these different you have genre, but you also have audience, and audience can also dictate genre. So, for example, you might have heard of something called Shonen Jump, which is like a big brand, and that has things like that publishes shonen material, and shonen material is stuff like Bleach and One Piece and Dragon Ball, and these big, they're for young boys.
Yeah,
and that's
quite larger than life. Yeah,
exactly. And specifically, they are for boys. That's not me being something that Jermaine Greer would not be happy with. It is literally the definition of the genre.
Take care.
Exactly. Yeah, I'll check my flies. And so shonen is for younger boys, and seinen is generally for adults. So it's manga that is for adults, but not that kind of an adult, but for
young adults.
For actual adults, right?
Okay.
So it's not, they can veer into material that is violent or very thoughtful or emotional, but they can also be comic, so they can be slice of life, they can be sort of romantic and that kind of thing as well, and they can err into slightly more risque areas as well that we might call a different genre of Japanese drawing, but it's not we're not talking about pornographic material, right? Seinen is very much it's for, like, to me, it's the good stuff. It's like where adult comic books are, in the same way that something like a Batman novel, like something like Arkham Asylum, might be considered an adult graphic novel, right? So it deals with difficult subject matter. But they can also deal with subject matter that is kind of a bit more thoughtful or a bit more intelligent or a bit more niche, that is for adults as well. And The Drops of God is that one. It is a series about wine. So this is written by Tadashi Agi, which is actually a pseudonym. So it's actually a brother and sister combo called Yuko and Shin Kibayashi, and it's illustrated by somebody called Shu Okimoto. It's a series of 44 books of 200 pages each.
Crikey.
That for the first main arc called The Drops of God, and it's a series about a character called Shizuku Kanzaki, and a person who's kind of his rival called Issei Tomine. I might be butchering all of this stuff, but they have been tasked with basically a competition that is a wine tasting, right? And the idea is that throughout these 44 books, they will taste what are called the 12 apostles, and these are 12 bottles, and they have to guess from a poem that the father of one of them, the dead father of one of them, has left them, who is this master taster, master critic for wine. He's essentially come up with these 12 apostles that are 12 very specific bottles of wine, and these two characters have to name what these 12 bottles of wine are, and if they can name more than the other one, then they win the competition. And if they win the competition, they get to go on and find whatever the drops of God is. And they will, if they can do that, they can win this massive collection of wine that's meant to, and this basically a huge treasure, effectively, that's been put together. So if it sounds niche, it's because it is. It's published by Vertical in the US and by Kodansha as well. So essentially, what we're dealing with is a manga series about wine, and you follow both of these main characters and a wider cast as well that join and leave the group. And it's about the main character, Shizuku. He basically has an incredible palate and an incredible nose, but actually doesn't care about wine. Like, really rebelled against his father and didn't want anything to do with wine. Doesn't know anything about wine. Doesn't know much about food, really. But travelled with his father, who was this critic and who set this challenge. And it's about him learning about the world of wine. So you, as a person who don't know much about wine, and that is definitely me, you start to learn stuff about it. And it's so incredibly well researched, this entire thing. So you come away from, a book, and you've learned about what is terroir in winemaking. What is the difference between this grape and that grape? Why are Bordeaux's particularly difficult to drink when they're young, whereas Italian wine is actually much easier to eat, to drink when it's young? Can you pair certain different kinds of wine with other different types of food? It really goes into depth on all of these things. It's, like I say, it's incredibly well researched, and it should be, because obviously there's 44 volumes of this thing.
I was about to say, that's a lot to spin from this premise.
It is. So and to be clear, that is technically part 1, and I am just talking about part 1 now, because I've only read part 1, but I have now read all 44 volumes, 6,500 pages of the Drops of God.
So, is it a spoiler to ask how many of the apostles they've found yet?
It isn't. Okay. They find all 12
within
those 44 volumes.
You'd hope, wouldn't you?
You'd hope. There are 2 more arcs. The second one is Drops of God Marriage, which is another 26 volumes, which I've not read any of. And then there is a 2 more volume follow-up called Drops of God Deuxième, which is just 2 more volumes after that. And those part 2 and part 3 deal with different parts of this competition, basically. So a spoiler is, and I think it's really important for people knowing going into this, because I did not know this, they don't find the Drops of God by the end of the 44 volumes.
Okay.
It's an incredible story, and I'm so glad I've gone through it. And going through it is definitely the right phrase. Like, when you're 44 volumes deep into something, 6,500 pages of into something, you really start to understand how a story is flowing and where something is going. You start to see these same beats happening over it again. Like, you start to see these tricks that the writer is doing, these beautiful illustrations. You start to understand, like, on the next page they're going to show me a close-up of the bottle, and it's going to have this kind of maybe visual in the background, and maybe they're going to start to move into this kind of a description next. And you really start to understand the creator quite a lot when you're with them for such a long time, and when the creators are with the series for so long. Like, it's not like, they did a couple of issues and then they changed the artist and then another couple of issues or whatever it is. This is a really long run. Some people out there might be thinking, "Oh, this sounds. I think I've heard of this recently, but not as a manga. Isn't there a TV series about this?" This is a new Apple series and they have adapted it from the manga. So there is a Drops of God TV show, a live action TV show that is out there at the moment, and it's, as I say, it's adapted from it, and it's actually adapted by a French-Japanese director, I think it is, and it's really interesting because a lot of Drops of God kind of speaks about, yes, other countries, New Zealand, Italy, those sorts of places, a little bit of Germany, but a lot of it is about France and a lot of it is about Japan. And the books as a series in that first arc, kind of as they're coming towards the end, are talking a lot more about Japanese wine and how it's kind of, becoming a bit more forthright in the world. But my God, I was getting really bummed out about a lot of manga. I was getting a lot of, because I find manga really difficult to find the good stuff.
Yeah.
But this Drops of God has just really reinvigorated it for me, because it's a series that it's got a lot of drama, it's got a lot of comedy, and it's got a lot of knowledge, and it's got a lot of heart, and it's got, the visuals are just absolutely beautiful, the drawings are incredible, the dialogue is actually really quite naturalistic, which I'm very impressed with, but it's still got those little cheeky manga winks and nudges, and abstraction sometimes in some of the visuals, but it's also niche. It's also deeply niche as a subject, but really fun to read at the same time. It's actually made me go, oh yeah, this is a really good medium for doing this stuff, in the same way that, it reminded me of series like Tezuka's Buddha series, or his Blackjack series, where it goes on for a really long time, but you're with that character for a really long time. You're really getting to dig into it. Or maybe something like one of Satoshi Kon's more adult focused manga. It was really, really good. Would I recommend all 44 volumes? I loved it, and I think after volume 1 you kind of know. I think it's one of those series that, and I quite like it for this, after volume 1, if you're I've got my fill here, I don't need to read any more of this, I know where this is going, or this just has not clicked with me, it will not click with you after the next 43 books, right? It very much is what it is, from volume 1 onwards. But as a exploration into manga that is a subject for a series where you think, how can they make 44 volumes? I mean, really, 60, 70 odd volumes for the entirety of the 3 arcs. How can they spin that out with this seemingly quite niche subject? The answer is brilliantly.
A question I wanted to ask you is, because you are a person who I think is just as comfortable listening or reading factual books as much as fictional books.
Yeah, I love both.
But one of the things that I find particularly appealing about this as a manga is the fact that it offers an incidental learning experience. And I'm just quite curious to know, for you, do you feel you've retained a better knowledge and understanding of wine through this form than you would have if, say, you had listened to somebody read a relatively dry book about the history of wine?
Okay, yeah.
As a connoisseur, for example, how you would kind of get into wine tasting. Yeah,
I mean, check in with me in 6 months, because I'm going to be reading a very dry wine book over the next few months. But I would say, I've studied.
So sorry, is that a book that's about dry wines, or?
It's a very dry book about. I'm sure there are dry wines in there, but yeah, it's more of a reference book, right? So, I would say that I think I went into this thinking to myself, well, if I learn a little bit about wine, then that's great, and I just want to see, is this an interesting story? And it turned out it was a very interesting story, very cool story. And I did learn some stuff. Do I think I learned as much as when I did an entire course on beer? No. do I feel like I learned as much as when I did one of my wine qualifications? Like, no. But it sort of doesn't matter in so much as there's a few really good standout lines that get repeated a lot in Drops of God, and one of them is, to know wine you have to taste wine, right? Like, you can't just read about it. You can't just like read about it in a book. And whilst I think that phrase has limits, like I don't necessarily agree like 100% with that. The actual like core point of being in it, being around it, being like actually consuming it, thinking about it on a theoretical level, but also consuming it on a practical level, and actually just subsuming into, you know, your sort of being into a thing, is how you actually learn about the thing. I think that is accurate. And when I was reading this book, what it really did was it just made me more excited for learning more about the subject. I actually took a photo of every wine in the series of 44 books that I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. I'll see whether or not I can get myself one of those or something like that.
That's lovely. That's a really lovely way. And if somebody asks you, oh, why did you select this wine, Pete? You can actually tell them that story, and that's really interesting. Interesting thing, like I discovered something the other day, and I think I must be the last person on the planet to know this thing that probably everyone else knows.
Go on.
And I thought I'd share that with you.
Okay.
And maybe, if I'm not the only person that doesn't know, maybe I've taught something to the listener.
I mean, honestly, I'm very likely to be the second. If you're the second to last, I'll probably be the last to know.
Right. So, you know when you're doing your recycling?
Yeah.
I'm a bit funny about having stuff with my address on it, because you hear stories of people rooting through bins for identity theft and stuff like that.
Sure.
Yeah. So for every Amazon package that I recycle, I always painstakingly pull the label off.
Okay, yeah.
Throw it away. Do you do that?
I do for certain things. So like, I'll do it for like a medication package. Right?
Okay, yeah.
But if people want to know where I live, they can just look up my name and address.
Oh, I know. It's just... Anyway.
It's built into you.
It is. It's inculcated within me.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, my parents taught me to do that as well. So I think maybe it's just maybe it is good practice. Do you know what? It's not harming anyone, is it?
It isn't.
So, you know what? I'm going to suggest maybe that is a good thing, and maybe I should start doing it a bit more. Yeah, go on.
So my wife told me the other day that she was like, what are you doing? Why are you pulling the label off? And she just got a bit of kitchen roll, a little bit under the tap, and you can actually just rub it off, and it just comes off straight away, like it's like a dry white ink on a dry white board.
What does?
The actual whole address and your name, you just wipe it off.
Oh my gosh.
Honestly, like, if you've got any leftover packages, go downstairs, kitchen roll under a tap, you just wipe it off.
That's incredible. How did she learn of this?
I have no idea. Probably Martin Lewis or something.
Yeah, he's
probably
the sort to figure that stuff out.
I didn't get his email blast. She did.
Yeah.
So probably that.
Yeah. That's a very good... That's take-home value.
I know. Because, you know, we've got to be careful, you and I. 'Cause I don't think we're the older ones of the four, aren't we?
We're the more mature
It's always a bit of a throw of the
ones.
dice when it's a tuna bus, just you and I, because Sam's the fun one.
Yeah.
Dan's down with the kids.
Yeah.
And then there's just me and you,
Yeah.
the elder statesman at the top.
Yeah. Sort of the ceremonial pair, really.
Yeah.
That's why we're so deeply respected by the two of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just thought at the very least some public information.
Let's get that out there.
Wouldn't go amiss. I think so.
I think it's really important for us to set the example. What with young whippersnappers like Dan and Sam.
Yeah,
they wouldn't do this.
Yeah, they can maybe talk about it on TikTok or something. You know what they're like. So, this is a weird one for me, Pete, because the game I'm going to talk about, you never got to play because you went off to paint miniatures at Aircon. Do you remember Aircon?
Yeah. Oh, wasn't it good?
It was amazing.
Wasn't it good?
Which we've spoken about in a few previous episodes of the pod now.
Yeah. Yeah, I was off painting miniatures with Duncan Rhodes' Two Thin Coats. And weren't you playing like a Lord of the Rings game or something?
Yes. So in the last episode, we were talking about IPs.
Yeah.
Sam talking about the fact that he recently picked up War for Arrakis, Dune.
Mm-hmm.
And Lord of the Rings tends to be a really popular IP for me.
Yeah.
And I'm conscious of the fact that I feel almost I'm at a critical mass of the amount of Lord of the Rings games I own.
Yeah.
But there was a game that came out last year, and it wasn't the Seven Wonders Duel version of Lord of the Rings, which everyone picked up, and for lots of people last year it was their game of the year. It was their favourite game. And
wow.
At time of recording, Sam and I would have just been to UK GE, and I imagine lots of people will be playing it still. It's like it's been a big hit that game has. That was not the Lord of the Rings game I was interested in. I was intrigued by the Fellowship of the Ring, the trick-taking game, or trick-taking game, I should say.
Is that its official title?
It's called the Fellowship of the Ring trick-taking game. When you look at it online, if you look at the box, it has the full Lord of the Rings there, but it gets a bit confusing because essentially it would be Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring, trick-taking game.
Right, okay, yeah.
That's a lot of colons.
It's also very Ronseal, isn't it? It's very like,
this
is what this is.
Yeah, which I know Sam really rubbed up against. That idea that it just didn't seem to have any imagination in terms of just the name of it.
Okay.
It was just, as you say, the Ronseal approach, very utilitarian. You know exactly what you're going to get.
So trick-taking, as a reminder, trick-taking is where you're essentially creating hands of like suits, essentially, like all clubs or all spades or all diamonds or like a run of 1, 2, 3, 4 or that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, so like it's one of the oldest forms of card game, essentially, where, and I know I spoke about this recently with the game Fishing, which we played at the convention, where somebody will play a suit and they will essentially be leading the trick, and then people going around the table will, if they've got a card matching that suit, they have to play it, and ideally they're trying to play a higher number of the same suit than the other person. And if whoever, once we get to the end of the round and it comes back to the person who first played the card, we look to see who has the highest number of the first played suits, and they win the trick, and they take those cards into their hand, and then they play the next one. So in the Fellowship of the Ring, the trick-taking card game, you've got a number of suits here, such as hills, forest, for example. Mordor is on there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it feels like it's a very rudimentary trick-taking game in that regard.
Yeah.
What I like in particular is it narrativizes the trick-taking game. So what it does is you're playing through the story of the Fellowship of the Ring. So when you lift up the box, you've got an empty recess to your left, which is literally where you can pick up and play and start. And then to the left of that, 2 other recesses that are kind of sealed. And one says Part 1, the other says Part 2. And essentially, each round you play, each game you play, is a kind of a chapter, and they're called chapters, from the Fellowship of the Ring.
Okay.
Where you're playing a trick-taking game, and then as you move on to the next chapter, other cards get added into the deck, others go away, because they're reflecting the different characters that appear and disappear in the game. So when you start the game, your hand of cards, and I've just got it here in front of me, a little bit of Foley there. You've got your various suits, like Forest, Shadow, I should say, which is the Mordor cards, Hill, and Mountain. You've also got a Trump suit, which is the Ring card, not surprisingly. It's the Fellowship of the Ring.
Okay, yep.
And a Trump suit is basically one that wins all, so it doesn't matter what suit began the round. Whoever plays the Trump will win, unless somebody plays a trump card that is of a higher number than the trump they played. So in this case, it is the Rings cards, not surprisingly. But it has a really interesting mechanic where nobody can begin playing a Rings card. You can't just start by playing a Rings card. The only way you can do that is if somebody plays a suit and you don't have that suit in your hand, but you have a rings card. Okay. And there's a little token which you flip to show when you're allowed to now just play rings cards outright. And that only happens when somebody has had the opportunity to play a rings card, and then suddenly anyone can play rings cards now. Mm-hmm. And you might be thinking, well, okay, well, is it just going to be whoever gets the most cards wins? Not necessarily, no. Mm-hmm. Because you have characters, as I mentioned briefly at the beginning. So when you start the game, you have a choice of Frodo, not surprisingly, Bilbo, Gandalf, and Pippin. Mm-hmm. And each of those characters has a particular win state that they need to do to win, because this is a cooperative trick-taking game in the similar vein to The Crew, which we spoke about ages ago on the pod. Yeah. A cooperative trick-taking game, so you're working together to satisfy the requirements for your respective characters. Unless we all satisfy our individual requirements for our characters, we won't win the game. We'll have to start again.
Right.
So for Frodo, if I'm playing a 4-player game, because this game goes up to 4 players, from 1 to 4 players, so Frodo has to win 2 or more rings cards. So around the table we're thinking, okay, at the end of this game we've got to make sure that when Frodo wins tricks, 2 of them we need to get at least 2 rings. Mm-hmm. We need to try and engineer that so it happens. Fair enough. Bilbo just has to win 3 or more tricks. Fair enough. Gandalf, they have to win 1 or more tricks, and they can add the lost card, which is a card that doesn't appear in anyone's deck, it's just a discard. They can add that to their hand, so Gandalf gets an extra card up their sleeve. Whoever plays Pippin, they have to win the fewest tricks.
Right.
Yeah, do you see what I mean?
Yeah. So they're pushing into lots of different kinds of... Are there individual winners at all, or is it entirely cooperative?
No, we all win together as a team.
Yeah, okay, I like that a lot.
So, and if you're a fan of Lord of the Rings, and when you look at Lord of the Rings games, you see big boards like War of the Ring, lots of pieces you're moving around. To have everything, the whole book, in a single small box like this.
Yeah, it's like,
and to have that,
it's like what, half an A4 page, if that?
I'd say about a third of an A4 page.
Yeah.
Genuinely.
Yeah.
And to know that other characters are going to appear that have their own rules. So, like, if you go to the next chapter, the Black Riders appear, and suddenly then Sam enters the fray, and Sam's win state is to win a hill card that has a particular number of the random Black Rider you drew. So Sam is trying to get a specific hill card with that number into their deck. If they do that, they've won.
That's very clever.
You can't show each other your hands.
Okay.
So you're having to go, yeah, I think I can do this, or such and such. You're having to kind of just try and work together as a team. And around, a game cannot last very long. And you think, we look around and go, we might as well just play the next one and the next one.
Yeah.
And it has these little bookmarks, this nice little velvet string for each of the sections. So you can kind of just put the cards back in and pick up where you left off. It also has a kind of a campaign mode as well, which is really nice. There are also object cards you pick up later on. I've not got to those yet, but you can just keep those, I think, separately. You can just throw them in the mix just to give you a little bit of a boost in certain areas. But it's thematically tied to the novel. And I can easily imagine myself picking up the other two and having the entire Lord of the Rings, because the 3 of them together will take up the same space as Battle of the Five Armies.
Yeah. Yeah. And would you call this a legacy game? Because it has ideas from legacy games.
Oh, very much
right?
so. But you're not scratching anything off. You're not tearing anything up. You can easily make it a legacy game. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
that's it. And you can play it solo. And it has quite a nice little 2-player mode as well. If you're playing 3 players in particular, what you have this kind of 7 wonders dual pyramid of cards, some face up, some face down, and as you kind of take cards, you flip over and reveal the other ones there. Mm-hmm. So there's this open hand there in the middle of you, and thematically it's quite lovely. So the One Ring card, whoever ends up with the One Ring card in their deck has to play Frodo. And the beautiful thing about the One Ring even though it's the lowest trump card, it has this power, and it's the only ring card that has this, where if you play it, you can choose to win this trick or not. So it's little things like that. Little things are just
nice thematics.
And Dan, Sam, and I played this, and we really enjoyed it. And I've played this a lot with my wife because she's really into co-op games, and she really likes Lord of the Rings. And yeah, really enjoyed it. We played about 4 games of this, and it eases you into it, like Frodo and Sam leaving the comfort of the Shire and going into this big wide world. It eases you into the game. Like you're basically playing it just a typical trick-taking game to start off with.
That's wonderful.
And then it just slowly becomes a little bit more complicated, and it's just following the threads.
This is very, very nice. Like, do you think that people who, because one of the great beauties of IP is that you get to attract an audience in, right? That's one of the great things about working with IP. One of the slight detractions sometimes is by working with IP to such an extent, sometimes you can end up putting some people off. So you say, this is you might be like, I love trick-taking games. Not a massive fan of Lord of the Rings. Like, am I going to get much out of it? And I guess the question, and I will say this, like, I don't think it is a death sentence for a game to have an IP attached to it, and because I've certainly seen titles and games come along whereby I've been interested in the thing but no interest in the IP that it comes from. Like, plenty of games have come along like that. But do you think this one offers anything to people who enjoy trick-taking games but aren't necessarily the biggest fans of Lord of the Rings? Obviously, I mean, if you're completely sworn off it, I'm sure that's probably just a no-no. But, like, is there anything here for people who aren't, that don't know who Legolas is, for example?
No, I agree. Yeah, no, definitely. I think so. Knowing who these characters are won't give you an extra insight necessarily.
Okay, that's cool.
At all.
Right.
Like, I think this works really, really well, I think, for people, a gaming group where some of them love the IP, others don't. They're not going to get an extra leg up in terms of their knowledge and understanding of it because they know the IP. In the same way that I can play Dune, I've seen the films. I don't have an intimate knowledge and understanding of its world, but I can still enjoy playing the game.
Yeah.
But this comes from Brian Bormuela, who I'm not familiar with any of the games they've designed elsewhere before. I don't think they've designed anything. I think this might be their first game. And it has a really refreshing art style.
How would you describe it?
Well, a lot of the Lord of the Rings games, typically, and understandably so, they are trying to echo the nostalgia that people have for the books. Yeah. And a lot of the book covers were designed by the one, had lots of paintings in them from like Alan Lee and John Howe, which are beautiful works of art, and they're typically paintings, all these beautiful kind of sketches. This is art from Elaine Ryan and Samuel R. Shimoda, and they're all like stained glass windows.
That's cool.
So there's this kind of holographic quality to the box, which is really cool. But like all the characters, they look like they're in a stained glass window, like you're walking into like a village church, and you look up and you go, okay, there's Samwise Gamgee, and the colours really pop as a consequence, because it is like, it's almost like Sagrada, the box cover for Sagrada, light coming through.
I was going to say, the art of it does look very that, to be honest. Like, yeah. And it looks really striking, and it doesn't look like like you say, it doesn't look like your typical Lord of the Rings game. Because those Alan Lee sort of like painterly, I mean, obviously they are, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, they're rubbish, because they're super iconic, but they are also they very much place something where they say, this is this kind of tone. And I think it sounds like this game is a bit more, it sounds like it's thematic, but it's thematic in a sort of like Spark Notes way, like a shortcut way of like, it's not like you're going through page after page after page in excruciating detail the journey of the Ring. You're taking something that is like almost like a the manga Hamlet version of Lord of the Rings, right? It's like a shortening of what this actually is, and it doesn't necessarily need to go into the same level of detail as a game, because it's a trick-taking game. Ultimately, it's not trying to be like realistic or simulationist or anything along those lines. I really like that. Managed to get some board gaming in myself recently, and actually played quite a few games of this now. A game called Harmonies.
Oh, we nearly played this when it was the night before we did Civilization. There was a possibility of us playing this. It didn't happen.
No,
I think we'd had a bit to drink.
I think we had. I think we'd enjoyed ourselves.
It wasn't harmonious, the situation we're in, so it didn't feel appropriate. This game has been extremely popular, but it's also been a bit of a Marmite game for some people.
Yeah, like it. So this is from Libellud. Is that how we Libellud?
Libellud, I think.
Libellud.
It sounds right to me.
The designer is Johan Benvenuto. The artist is Maeva del Silva. Again, apologies if I've butchered that. So it is a BGG darling at the moment, and I must admit, in the same way that as soon as somebody says, "Oh, you really must watch insert name of TV show here," as soon as I see that on BGG, I'm just like, I immediately am like, I don't care.
Still not played the Blueprints, have you, Pete?
No, still haven't played it. I'm sure it's brilliant. So this is Board Game Geek. If you're not as tuned into board games as others, Board Game Geek is like the biggest website in the world for board games, like it by a country mile, and it's got a really passionate community. And then they essentially vote on how good a game is, or you can track numbers on there, and that to see what is the most played game and all that good stuff. And generally the data is pretty good. They have ranks basically for the board games, and Harmonies is currently the 83rd most popular or most highly ranked board game ever. It is the 3rd highest abstract game and the 12th highest family game. And it's on the front page of BGG like all the time, and so Alex actually got bought a copy of it by a friend of hers for a birthday. I think it was like late last year that she got it, and we started playing it, and I sort of bounced off it initially. It's that abstract element to it, 3rd highest abstract game. I can see why people think it's an abstract game, and I must admit, to begin with, I sort of bounced off it because I'm not a huge abstract game fan. Like, generally, I have to really... I like theme, I like
same.
Story, and, all that good stuff.
Well, you've read 44 volumes about...
Well, exactly, yeah.
Wine.
Yeah, oh, goodness. And I sort of bounced off it initially. So the game is... Essentially, you have a board in front of you. It's up to 4 players. It works. It's got a solo mode. Not played any of that stuff.
Although apparently that's very good, the solo mode.
I've heard it's very good. Alex and I have been playing it 2-player, and essentially, so you have a board in front of you. Each player has a board in front of you, and they have. You essentially have a little. On the board is a map, one of 2 maps, and you choose which map you're using in the game, and then you will fill this map in with each of the little spaces on the map with tokens that represent things like mountains, forests, farms, and buildings and stuff like that. And you will keep playing the game until you have either completely run out of tokens from this pool of tokens, or you only have 2 or less spaces left on any of the players' boards, and that's when the game begins to wrap up. And how you get these tokens is they're all there are 5 different piles in front of you, each of which contains 3 different tokens. So 5 slots, 3 tokens each. And these are filled from a bag. So it's like a Hessian bag, and you reach inside, and whenever you've got a space open of 3 tokens, because you can whenever you take the tokens, there's a space available of those 3, and you take 3 tokens from the bag and replace what's been taken. So you essentially like have an idea of what resources you can take from any one pile. And in front of you, you also have a series of cards that require certain conditions on your board to be able to score with these little transparent cubes. Essentially what you're doing, the theme of it, and actually this is why as soon as you get into the theme of it and it goes away from the abstract stuff, I actually think it all starts to kind of slot into place quite nicely. The theme of it is that on these cards are like animals, and you are creating these habitats, and on this unique island of habitats for these creatures. And the idea is that as you're building these habitats out, you're scoring points. The higher the points becomes the victor, because you've made a more biodiverse environment, I guess, is the win. And like I say, I initially kind of bounced off it because I didn't really understand the abstract nature of it. It didn't really, there isn't much in the rule book about like telling, like leading up to a story or like kind of getting this across to you. And I didn't really see how all of the scoring actually kind of worked out. Like basically the way that the game scores is at the end, if you've got the longest river, for example, on one of the modes, then you get a certain amount of points for having a really long river. The way that the farms kind of or the fields come together, they have to be put in a certain shape, otherwise you don't score them at all. Mountains each have to be next to one another, and the taller the mountain, the more you score for that mountain. But you score none if it's a mountain just by itself. And a bunch of other different combinations of things that you need to be able to do. And I didn't see how I could effectively hold on to my destiny and actually like build things with a certain amount of knowledge up front of like, well, I'm building this thing out. I know that I'm going to need this building, and to create a building, I need to build it on top of something. So I know I'm going to have this resource and this resource. But I actually have to play all of these pieces as soon as I take them. I can't just hold on to them and then build a thing out. It's not like Catan, where I can hold on to 3 wheat and 2 wool. It's like, no, you take those resources and you must spend them immediately by placing them on the board.
But they don't have to be placed next to each other, do they?
No, they don't. So I was like, well, how do I effectively create a strategy around this? And the answer is, you're sort of... And I think this works really, thematically, I think works really well. You're trying to some extent, control nature, which by its very being is uncontrollable to some extent. And so as soon as you start to lock your mind into that of like, yeah, you can plan ahead a little bit, but at the end of the day, your island is going to build out and do different things, and you're going to go one direction and build it out in a certain way, and then your opponent is going to take some resources that you really wanted, and you're not going to be able to do that thing, so you're going to have to shift your strategy a little bit like mid-flight and see how that can work out. And it actually creates these really nice organic constructions, basically. And so I played game 1, bounced off it, played game 2, loved it, played game 3, absolutely hooked. This is an amazing game. Yeah, exactly, yeah. I'm telling you, don't get it. No, but like honestly, game 1, like I was a little bit like, I don't really. Game 2, game 3, I think I'm on to like game 4 now. Like I'm like, yeah, this is brilliant. This is absolutely like really, really smart. And smart in a way, again, low footprint, very like small box, well put together, lots of replay value. So there are special extra cards that you can add into the
Yeah,
game.
the animal cards.
Yeah, so you got animal cards, but you have these like special animal cards that are like
Right.
like variants of them basically that will let you sort of do weird multipliers later on down the line. A little bit like if you remember guilds from Seven Wonders Duel.
Yes,
like,
I do.
Basically, things that you will build up and they will give payoff later. The art on it is just shockingly good. Like
who does
really,
the art?
So the art is, I think I mentioned them earlier. The art is Maeva de Silva.
Sorry, yes, you did say.
And the way that it comes across is like somebody said, which colours do you want to use? And the answer was yes, basically. But not in a bad way. In a way, kind of like the way that Daybreak uses a lot of colour, in that you think, you know, we're going to have like really like 4 different color, like tones of yellow on here. I'm looking at
quite
the box for
pastel-y,
Harmonies.
but blocks of pastels.
Yeah, blocks of pastels, lots of different colours, lots of contrasting colours. And if you were to list out all the colours that would be on this thing, you go, that is going to be a huge clash. But somehow it all just kind of, again, harmonizes together. The more I think about this game, the more I realise what a beautifully deliberate game it is. How well constructed it is, how thoughtful every element of it is. Plays quick, so it's over in half an hour.
Oh, perfect.
Maybe an hour if you're teaching it for the first time and you're all both sat there reading the rules. It's a wonderful board game cafe game for people who, if you already know the game, it's one of those ones where it's a good icebreaker at a board game cafe of like, right, this is really good. It's got a more than enough to get your teeth into, like to really get stuck into, but it's accessible enough. The weight of it on BGG, and they weigh things out of 5, the weight is like 2, right? So it's not like super simple, but it's got something to it. It's got enough to it whereby you can have a conversation while you're playing it. Especially I think at 4-player, I think it will really shine at 4-player because you could have enough conversation as you go around the room doing the thing. You don't have to be constantly watching what your opponents are doing all the time, and you can plan ahead a little bit, but you can't plan ahead so much that you need to like sit there and keep it all in your head. Like, it's not a brain burner in that way, right? It's just a superb addition, and board games don't often make it into this house and don't survive very long, simply because to be on the we only have a small sort of shelf unit for it, and we Alex and I play a very small number of games. This is a game that is absolutely like, we get this out like whenever we can. We took it away with us, like glamping. We get it out on the kitchen table and sit down and really enjoy it. It's a game that we've played when we are really stressed out, but it's also a game that we've played when we're like really chilled, and it's always brought us back. It's always either kept that nice relaxed but focused thing going, or it's pulled us down to that level, because it's very difficult to have a harsh word to say when you're building something out for some otters. What are we talking about now?
It was the outro. We're done. So now we just remind them all the respective links, and then we say bye.
And we say bye. And I suppose the way that we would do that, Kris, is we would say something like that they can email stayingpod@gmail.com if they've got anything that they want to tell us about. Like, for example, I don't know, a manga that they really like that's about a really niche subject, or perhaps a book series that they've read that's way too long, but they did it anyway.
Have they lied to somebody relatively famous?
Yeah.
About stuff that they'd done which they hadn't seen? Yeah.
Have they ever put themselves into a compromising situation with a member of the intelligentsia, for example? they could do that. What else would we do? I guess we'd say that they can go to our Spotify, look at your playlist, which is very good.
Yeah, even better if you can listen to it.
Yeah, look at it, listen to it, however you want to interpret it, that's fine. They could do that.
There'll be images there of the gram of Sam and our trip to UKGE recently, which hasn't happened yet, but when you're listening to this, it will have happened. So there'll be some images there.
Yeah, so we'll remind them of that. To go to Instagram at Staying in Pod.
Harmonies and Fellowship of the Ring trick-taking game will be on our BGG page.
They will, and there are no video games from this recording, but in previous ones, obviously we've talked about other video games, and they are on our Steam Curator page, which people can go and see. So I'll make sure to mention that. And I think that's pretty much everything, other than you can go to stayinginpodcast.com. I should say that too, because that's got absolutely everything on there as well. I'll make sure we don't forget to do that.
And pants optional.
Right.
Take care.